All right, strap in, everyone. Let's plunge headfirst into the world of Sinister. We're talking pure supernatural horror, the kind that sticks with you.
Oh, it definitely sticks with you, those images.
And the sounds. We're deep diving into both Sinister films, the 2012 original and the 2015 sequel.
A lot to unpack there.
For sure, we're going to look at everything from the real-life nightmare that inspired the whole thing
That's a story in itself.
to the way those Super 8 films are used. So creepy. And we can't forget, Sinister was actually studied. They measured people's heart rates while they watched it.
One of the scariest films ever, according to science.
But it goes beyond jump scares, right? We're talking about the dark side of curiosity, what happens when you dig too deep, plus the whole vulnerability of families facing, well, pure evil.
Those themes are woven throughout both films.
So let's rewind to the beginning. The very idea for Sinister came from a nightmare. Imagine that.
The writer, C. Robert Cargill, he had this dream after watching The Ring, no less.
Right.
It was so vivid, so disturbing, it became the foundation for the entire franchise.
Blending classic ghost story vibes with that true crime element.
Exactly.
Okay, so walk us through how that nightmare turned into the first film.
Well, Sinister introduces us to Ellison Oswald, played by Ethan Hawke. He's a true crime writer.
But kind of a messed up one, right?
Yeah, he's got some issues. So Ellison moves his family into this house where a family was murdered. You'd think he'd be a little more cautious, but he's more focused on his next big book than, the safety of his family.
And of course, he stumbles upon this box of home movies, Super 8 films, each one showing a different family being murdered. Brutal stuff.
It's the way those scenes are put together, the grainy film, the unsettling score. It just gets under your skin. And then there's Bukhul, this menacing presence lurking in the background of the films.
Yeah, Boku, talk about nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Found footage is pretty common in horror these days, but something about Super 8, it just feels different.
It's more raw, more visceral.
Like, almost real.
Exactly. And the filmmakers, they know how to use that to their advantage. They leave a lot to the imagination, and often what we imagine is far more terrifying than anything they could actually show.
Plus, Bokhul himself, this ancient pagan deity, he doesn't jump out and scream. He's subtle, but that somehow makes him even more unsettling.
He represents this kind of slow-burning dread, a creeping evil that permeates everything. It's not physical, it's psychological. He's playing mind games.
And that corruption of innocence, that's a major theme, right?
Oh, absolutely. He preys on children, turns them into, well, basically his little helpers to carry out these horrific acts. It's twisting something pure and innocent into something, well, sinister.
Definitely taps into our primal fears. I mean, those childhood fears of things going bump in the night, the monsters under the bed, but on a whole other level.
For sure. And then you have the family drama layered on top of all that. Ellison is so obsessed with his work that he misses all the signs, all the danger his family is in.
It's like that old saying, curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah, but in this case, it's not just the cat in danger. It's the whole family. Ellison's need to uncover the truth, it ends up putting everyone at risk.
So it's like a warning, right? Be careful what you dig for. Some things are better left buried.
And it makes you question, how far would you go for the truth? What price are you willing to pay?
Then we have Sinister 2, which shifts gears a bit, but still keeps those core themes.
Right. We meet Courtney, a single mother, and her twin sons. They move into another Bugle-marked house. The sequel dives deeper into Bukhul's mythology, showing how he uses those home movies to, well, brainwash kids, basically.
Yeah, the twins are creepy, like seriously creepy. But it's interesting how they react differently to Bokhul's influence.
That's a clever way to explore childhood innocence and how differently individuals can be affected by trauma. Dylan is drawn to Bukhul, while Zach tries to resist.
And it ups the ante, right? Now, it's not just one family, one house, but this whole network of victims.
Exactly. It expands Bukhul's reach, making him even more terrifying. You start to wonder, what is this entity ultimately after? What's the end game?
And Sinister 2, even though critics weren't as crazy about it, I think it does a good job of showing the psychological impact of Bukhul.
It's a slow descent into madness, with the tension ratcheting up scene by scene.
Okay, so we've got this terrifying villain, this unsettling use of found footage, and this exploration of family dynamics and the dark side of curiosity. Let's break it down even further.
Those whole movies, though, right? They're not just creepy. They're like a whole commentary on how powerful media can be.
It's true. The way they're filmed, that Super 8, look, the color is all washed out, yellows, browns. It's like all the life has been sucked right out of them.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it all adds to that feeling of decay like watching something that's already dead.
And it makes you think, right, about how all the dark stuff we see, all the violence in movies and online can actually affect us.
Absolutely, like it leaves a stain on your mind.
The films kind of force us to confront that idea that what we watch, it stays with us.
It really does. It's like a metaphor for all the negativity and fear that spreads online these days, all the disturbing stuff we see, even if we don't want to.
It's like we don't have as much control over it as we think we do.
Exactly. And that lack of control, that's where that whole dark side of curiosity comes in.
Right, like Ellison in the first film, he gets so obsessed with the mystery, with finding out the truth about Buhul, that he completely ignores the danger.
He wants the knowledge, but he doesn't see the risk.
And it's not even just about solving the mystery. It's like this need to look, even when you know it might be bad for you.
Like those videos online, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ones that make you cringe, but you can't stop watching.
Exactly. The Sinister films take that feeling and just turn it up to 11.
And they show us what can happen when we indulge that curiosity, when we go looking for darkness, how it can come back to bite us.
Let's talk about the music for a minute.
Yeah.
The score in both films is so effective at building that tension.
It's not just jump scares and loud noises.
Right.
It's more atmospheric. It gets under your skin.
It's like a creeping dread.
It's exactly. Christopher Young, the composer, he knows how to use silence and these subtle dissonances to create that unease.
There are parts where the music is almost whispering, like something sinister is lurking just out of sight.
It's the kind of score that you remember long after the movie's over. It sticks with you.
It becomes part of the whole experience.
Exactly. It adds to the impact of everything you see and hear.
And then there's the whole thing about Sinister being scientifically proven to be one of the scariest films ever made.
Oh, yeah, that University of Westminster study.
They measured people's heart rates while watching different horror movies, and Sinister had the highest average heart rate.
So it's not just subjective opinion. There's data to back it up.
People were genuinely terrified.
It definitely struck a nerve. It tapped into some primal fear.
And Buhul, with his creepy imagery and his methods, he's become a modern horror icon.
Right up there with Freddy and Jason.
They all play on that fear of the unknown, the things that go bump in the night.
But Buhul feels different, somehow more relevant to our modern anxieties.
He's like a villain for the digital age.
Exactly, a symbol of how darkness can spread through media and technology.
Which brings us back to those home movies. They're not just about documenting the murders, they're like a tool for spreading his influence.
Like a virus.
Corrupting new victims, perpetuating the cycle of violence.
And in a world where we share everything online, that idea is pretty terrifying.
So we've got the terrifying villain, the unsettling found footage, the exploration of curiosity and the power of media. But there's another layer we need to talk about. We've talked about a lot, the scares, the imagery, Bughul's whole deal. But for me, it's the families, you know?
It's the human element that really gets you.
Exactly. You've got parents dealing with the unthinkable, trying to protect their kids from something they don't even understand.
And that struggle, that desperation, makes the horror hit harder.
Like, it's not just jump scares, it's that primal fear of losing the people you love most.
That helplessness.
Right. Like in the first film, Ellison is so wrapped up in his work, his ambition, that he's totally blind to the danger his family's in.
Classic case of tunnel vision. He wants that success so badly he forgets what really matters.
And Courtney, in the sequel, she's fighting tooth and nail to protect her boys.
She's fierce, but she's up against impossible odds.
But that's what makes it so relatable, right? That love, that fear, those are things we all understand.
That's what elevates these films beyond just, like, slasher flicks. It's the emotional core that makes the horror resonate.
And it makes you think about your own life, your own family. What would you do in that situation?
It taps into those universal anxieties.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The origins of Buchul, the way he manipulates people, those creepy home movies, and how those films mess with your head. We even talked about the science behind the fear.
It's a deep rabbit hole, that's for sure.
But before we go, I want to leave you with something to ponder. Remember how Buchul's power is tied to those images, the way they spread?
It's a disturbing thought, isn't it?
Especially in today's world where everything goes viral instantly. Like, what if the things we share online, the stories we tell, are actually contributing to something dark and sinister?
Makes you think twice about what you click on, doesn't it?
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into Sinister. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of darkness.
Sweet dreams, everyone.
And hey, if you get the urge to watch some old home movies, maybe leave the lights on.